Bible movies kind of look like mud, and it makes me really mad. That's the thesis of this video. Have you ever noticed how whenever they show Mexico in movies, they always make it look like really orange and they play a certain type of music and it's like the whole thing is made of sand and maracas? Because that really makes me mad. And that's kind of how I feel about Bible movies. Before we start this video, I should make it clear that I have certain biases about the Bible, right? Like, I believe the Bible is a true book. Maybe not always true in the same time and way and in the same sense, and maybe not entirely free of human character, but it's more true than any other book I've ever read, and it aligns with reality more than any other book that I've ever read. And I also think it's a beautiful book, and that's more of what this video is about. The fact that I think the Bible is beautiful is what makes me annoyed with the fact that I think almost no Bible movies have ever been beautiful. That's a grand hyperbolic statement that maybe we should go into. It's not that there have never been Bible movies that have moved me, but what I'm really talking about is visually, right? Like, I have always wanted Bible movies that visually, through imagery and color and cinematography, express the beauty of the Bible. And there's a very, very slim picking of movies that I could say are Bible movies and are also visually beautiful. As you'll see, I'm not going to focus hugely on live action movies in this video, but I do have kind of like a 10-step program that I've developed in my mind for how to make live action Bible movies more beautiful, and here goes. The main thing that live action Bible movies need more of, I think, is color, and I think that can manifest in a lot of different ways, right? One of the ways in which Bible movies could use more color is by casting more people of color. I am sick and tired of live action Bible movies that have all white British people in the roles of the disciples and Jesus and everything. It just pains me to no end. And I think one way to make more Bible movies visually beautiful is to have people with accurate ethnicities from the Middle East and even from Africa and places like that. That makes it all the more interesting to watch and all the more accurate to watch. And I want to see more of that. Another thing is costume design. I get really annoyed, unreasonably annoyed, at the fact that Bible movies seem to think that everyone in the ancient day dressed in nothing but brown, because colors existed on garments in ancient times. Yes, they were maybe a luxury, and yes, maybe something worn more by women than men, but colors did exist. And every time I see like a live action Bible movie where you see the city of Jerusalem, and it's just like a bland landscape of people in brown robes, like Jedi and Tatooine, you know, trotting through the wilderness. I'm like, that's like, there was life to these cities and life to these people and culture that was colorful and celebratory and full of energy. And I rarely see that captured in the cultures depicted in Bible movies. And so that's another thing. The biggest thing that I would say that I want to see more of in live action Bible movies is nature and creation and the earth. I think that a lot of Bible movies seem to think that like sunsets didn't exist in the ancient times, because it's strange. You just never see the beauty of nature and the beauty of creation in these movies. And in the Bible, the beauty of nature and the beauty of God's creation is one of the things that is the most central to the imagery and the poetry and the metaphor of the text, and central to indicating God's love and creativity, right? And in Bible movies, it's like there are no sunsets, there are no flowers, there are no rainstorms, there are no animals, there are no grassy fields, right? It's like a Tatooine, Mos Eisley sandscape, and that's it. And yes, I know that in the Middle East, things are a little bit more sandy than elsewhere, right? Like, yes, there are a lot more deserts in the Middle East than other places. And so these movies are trying to capture that. But like, sunsets existed, and you never see sunsets in Bible movies. And plants did exist, and green did exist. And you see so much of that reference in the Bible, and yet it's never referenced in Bible movies. And so that is a big thing, I think. Now, I should note before I go on that I've actually been given hope in this front in the last few years. There's a show called The Chosen, which is like, it's like the largest crowdfunded project of all time or something. They raised like tens of millions of dollars through the internet and everything. And it's a long-form television series about Jesus told through the perspective of the disciples. And it's actually really good. I was really surprised. I thought it would be low budget and bad, but it was good. And you should totally watch it. It's like free on their website and stuff. This is not a commercial, but I did think that they did a lot of this really well. There's an episode about halfway through the first season where they show the wedding at Cana, and you really do get to see the colors of the Jewish culture and colorful garments and the festivities of a wedding and dancing and everything. And it makes you go, man, like, this is not a hellscape. Like, these people are full of joy and everything. And it causes you to see the beauty in that culture and everything. And that's cool. There's also a lot more humor in that series. And yes, they show sunsets, which is awesome. So The Chosen does it really right. And then I also watched this movie called Last Days in the Desert with Ewan McGregor playing Jesus. And that's another movie that I thought did things pretty well. They actually use imagery in a really strong way and use creation and sunsets and flowers and birds and stuff like that in a really strong way. So those things have actually given me some hope in recent years. But this video is not about live action stuff. That was more of a sidebar on the road to our real topic. Here is a statement that I think a lot of people in the audience of this video will agree with. The Prince of Egypt is my favorite Bible movie. I think it's a masterpiece. I think it's maybe the best Western animated movie. It's my favorite animated movie, and I think it conveys the truth, the beauty, the joy, and the imagery of the Bible better than any other Bible movie that's ever been made. There are a lot of reasons that The Prince of Egypt is so good. One of the reasons I think that I found out recently is that it had a female director, which I didn't know until now. And I think that's why you see a lot more precedence and prominence to the female roles in the film, which are really strong. Another thing that I think makes it so great is the fact that it embraces the diversity of the characters. They really show these brown people as brown people, right? Like, they don't animate them as white people. And yes, the voice actors are white, which is unfortunate, though they do a really good job. But the cool thing is that the characters look brown, and I think that's awesome. Another thing that I think is awesome about The Prince of Egypt is the musical aspect of it, right? Like, music is central to the Bible. All of the Psalms, most of the Psalms were meant to be sung and were sung. And that's why I think it's really cool when you see music in a Bible movie, because that was central to the culture of the time, and it should be central to these movies. And I think music can capture the deeper emotion and the richer themes and the richer motifs and the richer spirituality to these movies and to these stories than pure dialogue ever could. I think music can be really central to helping humanize historical characters. You know, I think about Hamilton, and one of the things that Hamilton does really, really well is it takes these stone statue historical figures of our founding fathers and it humanizes them in a way that makes them seem like people again. And I think the music is a central part of that, because it gets at a deeper core of their humanity than simple dialogue and speeches ever could. And so I've long said that I think the Bible could use a Hamilton, right? Like that humanizes characters in the Bible more than they ever have been. And of course, there have been Bible musicals, but I think The Prince of Egypt is the closest we've ever come to that, and it does it really well. But aside from all that, aside from the music and the diversity angle and the female prominence and everything, I think the thing that makes The Prince of Egypt so freaking good, and the thing that makes it so much better than every other Bible movie that's ever been made, is the fact that it's animated, and the animation is gorgeous, and I love it. Before this video, I was actually on YouTube going and looking at some clips from The Prince of Egypt, and I was watching one of my favorite scenes, which is the scene where Moses talks to the burning bush for the first time. And, oh, by the way, that scene was animated in part by James Baxter, which is freaking awesome. He was involved in the Beauty and the Beast and stuff, and that's awesome. But the first comment on that video was, man, I wish there was a movie about Jesus that was done in the style of the animation of Prince of Egypt. And I went, yep, that's what I wish too. The animation in The Prince of Egypt is so freaking good, and they did such a good job, and I think it's the best that DreamWorks has ever done. And that is saying a lot, because DreamWorks has done some of my favorite movies, like Kung Fu Panda and How to Train Your Dragon and stuff. And one of the things that makes it so great is how expressive it is, right? That's another element in humanizing these Bible characters like Moses and stuff, is the fact that we're really able to see the emotions that cross their face when they sing and when they speak, and the big eyes and everything. The expressiveness of these characters really draws a lot out of it. The other thing I would say is that the imagery is really strong, and it does the imagery so well of these iconic stories. I think you would be hard-pressed to find a person my age who, when you say parting the Red Sea, they don't think of the Prince of Egypt's parting of the Red Sea, right? The scene where they're walking through the water and the whale goes alongside them in the ocean in the parted sea. It's like, it's so good, and everyone remembers that moment, and the imagery is so strong that it sticks in your head. And I think that is something that only animation can really provide. So that's kind of the thesis of this video, is that I think Bible movies should be more beautiful in general, even in the live action realm. But more than that, the thesis is that I think animation is central to expressing the beauty of the Bible in a compelling and imagery-centric way. One of the things that I think animation does so much better than anything else is expressing abstract concepts and spiritual concepts, right? Just ask Pete Docter, who directed Inside Out and Soul. Those are movies that deal in a huge part with abstract concepts and emotional concepts and spiritual concepts, and they're able to make them accessible for people in a creative and imagery-focused way. And that's something that I've rarely seen with the Bible, is an expression of the more wibbly-wobbly abstract concepts through animation. The Bible is one of the most beautiful books you'll ever read in terms of poetry, right? And if you read Psalms and if you read Song of Solomon, you'll get all kinds of amazing imagery built on nature and built on creation and everything. And some of it is just wild, right? And it's stuff that you could never imagine in your head in tangible, real-world terms. But I think when you see things in animation, they can really bring that imagery to life in a way that is beautiful and in a way that is compelling. So animation does imagery really well. It does abstract concepts really well. But I think one of the things that it also does really well is world building. And that's another thing that I love in animated movies. I mentioned Kung Fu Panda and How to Train Your Dragon earlier. And one of the things that I love the most about Kung Fu Panda and How to Train Your Dragon is the world that they establish, right? The world of China and Kung Fu Panda is this immersive city, and the city in Kung Fu Panda 2 is awesome, and How to Train Your Dragon has Burke. So animation is central, I think, to creating these beautifully imagined, immersive worlds, and it's long been known for that. And that has actually been something that I felt lacking from Bible movies in all the time that they've been made, is a sense of world building, right? Like, Jerusalem as a city should feel like a real place, you know, and a place that you could explore. And I've seen very few Bible movies that have that idea in them. You know, I think part of that hinges on the fact that Bible movies are often very low budget, and so they kind of shoot in a room and they light bright lights outside the window so you can't see out the window and everything. And that's fine. That's the limitations that they have. But that's where I think animation would really expand the boundaries of that, and it would allow you to do a more immersive setting in the city of Jerusalem or in Egypt or something like that, in a way that people could really put themselves in the shoes of the characters more than they ever have before. Some of my favorite recent animated movies have been from Cartoon Saloon, right? The Breadwinner, Song of the Sea, Wolfwalkers, Secret of the Kells, and everything. Those are gorgeous, hand-drawn animated movies, and they have so much soul to them. And I've often thought, like, it'd be so cool to see a Bible movie in that style. The Breadwinner especially, I think, is a great example because it's actually set in the Middle East, and it manages to make that setting, despite the sandy desertness of it, it makes it really interesting to watch. Another thing that The Breadwinner does really well is it actually takes some stories from the Islamic tradition and imagines them with this sort of shadow puppet-ish concept where they tell the stories in this imaginative, like it has a childishness to it, but it also has a really strong sense of imagery to it. And that's how I would love to see maybe the parables of Jesus or something like that. I imagine the story of Job told in the style of Anomalisa in stop motion animation. How cool would that be? I imagine the way that Coco brings to life the afterlife and the land of the dead in such a beautiful, rich, joyful way. And I think, wouldn't that be so cool to see the kingdom of heaven or the heavenly realm in the Bible imagined with that level of joy and that level of creativity in the world building? You know, not just a land of fluffy clouds and harps, which is not biblical at all, but something that is far more immersive and imaginative. I think that would be so cool. I imagine the story of Daniel told in the style of The Wind Rises, told in hand-drawn Studio Ghibli animation, like anime. How cool would that be? I don't know. I just have all these ideas, and I feel like so many of these stories would be so much better in animation. Can you tell I'm passionate about this? Oh, one more. I tweeted this the other day. I said that the recent Bible movies, most of the Bible movies that I have seen, feel like the live-action Lion King remake. They feel like mud, and that movie feels like mud. And all I want are some Bible movies that feel like the original Lion King. And so I've been thinking about that a lot recently. Like, wouldn't it be cool to see Genesis in the style of the Lion King with the circle of life and everything, the level of colors and animals and everything that are in that? It would just be so energetic and so much cooler than seeing something in live action. I don't know. Here's the part of the video where I'm going to talk about the things that I have seen that have done it right. And one of the things that I saw recently that blew me away, other than The Prince of Egypt, was actually recommended to me by my friend Ben from Canada, who is the editor for Mr. Sunday Movies, and now he's the editor for Nathan Zed. So he's working his way up in the world. It's pretty cool. But he recommended me this movie called The Miracle Maker, and I think it came out in like 2000. It's free on YouTube now. It was pretty low budget. It's made by like Russian filmmakers, but it's a stop-motion animated film about the life of Jesus. Somehow, they condense the life of Christ into 90 minutes, and they make it compelling, and it doesn't feel rushed. I was blown away. And they even like add stuff that other movies don't have. You see you see Jesus woodworking and doing carpentry, which is cool. They give Judas a compelling backstory, which is awesome. But more so than that, the stop motion animation is jaw-dropping, and it gives it this tangibility where somehow, I don't even know why it is this way, but the stop motion animation in that movie feels more real than the live action Jesus movies that I've seen. Where many of the live action Jesus movies I've seen feel like normal white Americans dressed up in costumes, you know? But with this Miracle Maker movie and the stop motion animation, it was really immersive, and they do it really well. It gets better though, because I thought the stop motion was good enough, but the cool thing about this movie is that when Jesus tells his parables, they actually render them in 2D hand-drawn animation, and they're really cool to watch and really expressive. They have this almost like Monet, Picasso sensibilities to them. And then they also use 2D animation to express like a deeper spiritual reality. And so there's this scene, it's amazing, I'll show it on the screen, where Jesus casts the demons out of Mary Magdalene. And you see the ugliness and the hideousness and the evil coming out of her, and it's just the coolest thing. And the imagery is really strong. And then you see Jesus. And there's another scene where Jesus is, he's praying to his Father, you know, please take this cup away from me. Please take the cup of death away from me before he's crucified. And they imagine his prayer in 2D animation. And I think probably the motivation for this was that the stop motion puppets are expressive, but they're not super expressive. And so the 2D animation gives them a way to show more complex and emotional facial expressions, which is cool. And so when you see Jesus praying this prayer, pleading with his Father, and you see it in 2D animation, it is heartbreaking. And you see the fear, you see the anguish, you see the dread in him, and then eventually you see the bravery. And it's just so cool, and I loved it, and you could feel the soul on the page, even more so than anything I've ever seen in live action. So that's one. It's called The Miracle Maker. It's on YouTube. You should totally check it out. And then while I was making this video, I was actually sent another video by my friend Leonardo, who is a short animation animator, and he did a really good job with this. He did this hand-drawn depiction of the life of Jesus. It's really short, just a sort of imagery test, I guess, and it's beautiful. And I just wanted to share it here so y'all could see it because it is so glorious to watch. And I don't know, whenever I see something that's hand-drawn and when I see the pencil marks on the page, I just have this sense of like, you feel the soul in that when you see the pencil on the paper. And this Jesus thing actually made me kind of emotional. Like it was just so beautiful to watch something that you could feel the creator's passion that went into it. And I just wanted to share that here too. And finally, and I know like if y'all have dived into this before, there are a lot of people who are ready to leave this in the comments because it kind of fulfills everything I've been talking about. The biggest thing that I would recommend and the biggest thing that has given me hope on this front is the Bible Project on YouTube. They do incredible animated videos. I think it's some of the best animation I've ever seen on YouTube. And basically they explore different biblical concepts, different biblical stories, different biblical characters through animation and through imagery. And I think theirs is probably the best case for the idea that like imagery can tie things together and give you a sense of the motifs, right? Where they show you how one thing ripples to the next thing, ripples to the next thing by connecting the imagery between those things. And it's just beautiful. So I am hugely encouraged by the existence of the Bible Project, and they have done a lot for my personal faith. They've given me an imagination for these concepts and given me imagery to associate with them that I never had before, which is awesome. So the last thing that I wanted to do with this video was read a quote from C.S. Lewis, one of my personal favorite authors, pretty obscure, sure you never heard of him. And one of the things that Lewis often talked about with his writing and with the Chronicles of Narnia was the idea of stealing past these watchful dragons. And you'll see what that means. Let me just read the quote.
I thought I saw how stories of this kind could steal past a certain inhibition, which had paralyzed much of my own religion in childhood. Why did one find it so hard to feel as one was told one ought to feel about God or the sufferings of Christ? I thought the chief reason was that one was told one ought to. An obligation to feel can freeze feelings, and reverence itself did harm. The whole subject was associated with lowered voices, almost as if it were something medical. But supposing that by casting all these things into an imaginary world, stripping them of their stained glass and Sunday school associations, one could make them for the first time appear in their real potency. Could one not thus steal past those watchful dragons? I thought one could.
So yeah, for Lewis, writing the Chronicles of Narnia and imagining a new world, but with the same thematic ideas, enabled him to turn off that reverence that so often the Bible inspires and really explore the awe and wonder and joy of the concepts without the baggage of like talking about Jesus in this very, weighty way. And that quote reminds me a lot of what animation can do, I think. I think animation can steal past those watchful dragons, for lack of a better term, right? Animation is universal. There are people who connect with animation who don't connect with anything else. Animation can connect with adults and kids. It's so expressive. People can see themselves in characters in ways that they couldn't see themselves in live action characters. And the biggest thing I think that animation does is it invites you to imagine with the creator and with the storyteller. And that's something that I think animation shares with the Bible. I think the Bible in many ways, with the imagery that it constructs and with the stories that it constructs and with the miracles that you witness, it invites you to imagine and invites you to hope even. And animation does the same thing. I think when you watch animation, you have to imagine. There's a willing suspension of disbelief where you go, all right, these are just drawings on a paper, but I'm watching this and these are real characters that I'm caring about somehow, despite the fact that it's just paper flipping through or it's just a computer program running, right? And so, I don't know, that's what I wanted to land on, because I think one of the things that makes animation so much more powerful than live action in terms of conveying these stories sometimes is that it invites you to imagine. And it's also universal. It steals past those watchful dragons of reverence and it can bring everyone in. And so that's where I think animation is really powerful, and I would love to see more animated Bible movies. If you're a producer watching this, please take heed. I don't know what you're gonna do, but I just want more. So, that's the video. That's what it's about. Thanks so much for watching this video, by the way. As you can tell, I may have had these concepts sort of swirling around in my head for many years, just like wishes that have gone unfulfilled. Especially if you're someone who is not a big fan of the Bible, or if you're, not a believer of da-da-da. Thanks for sticking around. I'm really glad that you're here, and I would love to hear what you have to contribute in the comments below. I think one of the things that we can probably all agree on is that Bible movies could be a lot better, and most of them look like mud. And so, whatever you believe, I think we can agree on that. So yeah, thanks for sticking around, and I would love to hear what other people would like to see more of in Bible movies going forward. I don't know how much use this is going to be in the grand scheme of things, unless like the CEO of PureFlix comes and watches this video, which that would be a whole other can of worms. But I think it's fun to talk about our hopes and dreams of what movies could be, and maybe what movies we would like to make someday. And I've also been inspired by some of the things that are doing it right, like the Bible Project and like this Miracle Maker movie and like the Prince of Egypt. If anything, just gush about the Prince of Egypt in the comments. It's great. Anyway, thanks for sticking around. Please like, subscribe, comment, Patreon, all the things. You know the drill. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.